It's a strange time for the world, and particularly for the young ones who don't completely understand why they have to stay home all the time or wear a mask and not interact with their peers if they're heading back to the classroom. Well, here to help parents better handle this delicate situation is Beverly Hutchison, Director of Development for the D. Norton Child Advocacy Center. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So, yeah, I mean, this is a weird time for everybody, right? So
Right.
for kids who are heading back into school, it's not going to be the normal interaction in the hallway, or at least it really shouldn't be. But I would imagine that this raises some anxiety as to how this experience is going to be so very different from the past. How do you help parents deal with that?
Well, what we know from years of helping families deal with the stress of abuse, there are some really positive actions that parents can take that help their child manage their own stress. And first, that's really parents addressing their own uncertainties and fears and anxieties around starting back to school. To address those, name them, find another adult to process those feelings with. Do some self-care for yourself, get good rest, exercise, do some mindfulness activities, and then you're going to be ready to start a conversation with your child about how they are feeling.
Now, we're doing this interview now where a lot of kids have either returned to school already or will be returning to school shortly. How soon should parents have been addressing these issues before the back to school time came?
I don't think that there's a right or a wrong time to start the conversation. There's been so much uncertainty, and there still remains uncertainty for a lot of the children going back to school. So I think now is a great time. Whether they've started school or they're yet to start school, you can start the conversation about, what's going to be different this year. You're going to be wearing masks. What else have you heard about what's going to be different at your school? Then also talk about things that are going to be the same. You're still going to get to see your friends, the positive things. And then you can lead into that conversation about how they are feeling about all of those things.
And what are some of the common anxieties? Let's just talk about back to school in general, just going back to school under normal circumstances. What are some of the most common anxieties children tend to have?
Well, I think there's always, even in a normal year without a pandemic, there are anxieties about starting a new school, and will I be accepted, and will I be liked, and how will I do in school, and will I like my teacher? These are really normal, things that we expect our children to have thoughts about. But this year you add on what they've already experienced and the stress of the pandemic to this point. And what we know at D. Norton is stress is cumulative. And so they've experienced the stress back in the spring of leaving school suddenly. They've had the stress of being home all summer. And now they're going back to a school situation that's pretty uncertain.
Right. Okay. So we need to take a break here. But when we come back, I want to talk about some of the mechanisms to ease that stress, some of the self-talk that children can do amongst themselves that parents can teach them. So we're going to go into that coming up after the commercial. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. We've been chatting with Beverly Hutchison, Director of Development for the D. Norton Child Advocacy Center. And typically at the D. Norton Child Advocacy Center, you talk about and you deal with children who have found themselves in abusive situations. So you deal with adolescent stress all the time. And over the course of being placed in a toxic situation, for instance, children just naturally develop their own inner dialogue. And so when you take abuse out of the picture and you come back into a situation where you're going to school under very rare circumstances, some of that negative self-talk can still occur. So what are some of the tools parents can equip their kids with to help them de-stress?
Providing a safe place to talk is really an important first step. You want to give them the open space to use their own words to talk about how they feel, what they're thinking about. And then you as their parent can address those specific feelings and thoughts. You really want them to share with you rather than you presume to know what's going on in their head. Really simple things you can do too to help de-stress the situation for your child.
And I think under any circumstance, extracurricular activities are also very helpful. They keep your child engaged. So what examples of some extracurricular activities should parents put their children into? And it doesn't necessarily have to be private violin lessons. You know what I mean? I mean, just anything to kind of help get their mind off of the situation.
Well, we know that exercise helps, right? And that can be any kind of exercise. It can be a team sport if that is safe and healthy and done in a socially distant sort of way. But it can also mean just getting outside as a family, going for a ride, taking a run. That's not a bad place for them to be with their friends. Go for a bike ride with your friends. Be outside, get some exercise. That's a great way. But if your child is not artistic, if they have other interests, give them time and space to do that as well. And then as a parent, create some normal routines in your home. When everything is uncertain out in the world, it feels very good to children of all ages to know that things are going to be normal at home, that dinner's going to be at this time, that bedtime is this time, that there's certain expectations in a world that is very uncertain, that at home we know this is how our family is going to operate.
And I know the news, it can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it informs, but then on the other hand, it can also frighten. So maybe limit the amount of news that a child digests every single day.
That's definitely something that parents should keep an eye on. Not only news, social media as well. We know spending a lot of time online, and they will continue for those children who are doing Zoom school or virtual school. They're on their computer a lot, so there's a lot of opportunity for exposure. One other thing we love to tell parents that this is a great time to do is to review those safety and boundary rules in your own home. We always encourage parents to do that every year as school starts back, but this year in particular. And, remember to talk about safety online as well as part of that conversation.
Absolutely. Beverly, perfect way to end this conversation. I want to thank you so much. Great advice.
Thank you.